How what's up, y'all? It's Poppin' It's D about to react to this vid by Maddie Balls. It's titled "The Cartel's Deadly Grip on the Music Industry." What? They're involved in the music industry as well? What the hell was going on? Let's see what's going on. Let's watch.
Recently, there have been multiple headlines about popular artists like Peso Pluma and Fuerza Regida having to cancel concerts because of threats from the cartel. But this is not the first time that cartels have threatened musicians, nor is it the extent to which the cartels are involved in the music industry. Cartels have been behind the rise of many artists. They've paid artists to write propaganda for them. They've laundered money through artists, and they've even murdered many successful musicians. So join me today as we look into the cartel's deadly grip on the music industry. But first, before we can understand their grip on the music industry, we must first understand a genre called narco-corridos. Now, quickly, I just want to make a little disclaimer that if it wasn't apparent already, I'm not an expert on this genre of music, and I'm also not an expert on cartels. I've just seen a couple of headlines lately that made me want to investigate this on top of some stories that I've heard online over the years. So I'll make sure to explain it to the best of my ability, but if I'm wrong about anything or I mispronounce something, feel free to let me know in the comments below. So narco-corridos, also known as corridos tumbados, is a subgenre of the regional Mexican genre of corridos. Corridos are narrative ballads, so storytelling songs. Narco-corridos are just drug ballads. Originally, corridos focused on heroic tales of bandits and outlaws, and they eventually began mythologizing the drug traffickers who were rapidly gaining influence across the country. Corridos themselves have been around for a very long time, but narco-corridos in particular have been around since the 1930s. Some people have compared narco-corridos to gangster rap, and NPR said...
Yeah, I was about to say, that is kind of similar to gangster rap, but the reason why it's just so bizarre because, like, a ballad is wild. That's just like if fucking SZA or somebody was singing about, like, you know, drugs or whatever. I'm like, girl, what the fuck? You know, or killing people. You know, it would just be odd. Or even if a male singer is, like, singing about that, I think that's strange. So that's what makes it odd. If they were rapping, it's like, okay, that fits kind of the aggressive nature. But a ballad?
Journalism put to song, telling stories of drug lords, arrests, shootouts, daring operations, and betrayals.
I know you know. Abuela would not approve.
However, unlike rap, I find it very funny how these songs are so happy and upbeat.
Right.
If you're not a Spanish speaker like myself, I highly doubt you'd be able to guess the lyrical content.
Exactly. I'm like, wait, if I heard somebody playing it, I'd be like, yes, represent your culture. I would think it's like upbeat and like happy.
Similarly to gangster rap, these songs have been very controversial. Many radio stations and government officials have attempted to ban the songs themselves and performances of the songs. Even in California, one radio station stopped playing the songs altogether, and NPR said in 2009 that the glorification of the drug trade has irritated the Mexican government to the point that narco-corridos are banned from the Mexican airwaves. And I believe to this day they are still banned. Tijuana's Secretary of Public Security even canceled a concert because he suspected the band Los Tucanes had connections to the cartel. At one point, the Mexican government even proposed prison sentences of up to 3 years for people who make this type of music. One band called Los Tigres del Norte was even fined $25,000 for performing what the government deemed narco-corridos. Some lawmakers in Mexico have called for the banning of narco-corridos altogether, while others have said things like, the corridos are attempts by Mexican society to come to terms with the world around them, and drug violence is a big part of that world. You cannot blame narco-corridos for drug violence. Drug violence is to blame for narco-corridos. The more I learn about narco-corridos, I can't help but compare the genre to rap, because similar to narco-corridos, rap has had a lot of controversy and criticism, with people previously trying to ban the genre or certain songs, and the artists saying that they are just talking about the world around them. But unfortunately, the biggest issue with the genre of narco-corridos is the trail of bodies it has left behind it.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not, I don't think the death impact is nearly as bad with like gangster rap and like them talking about the little beefs and shit they have in their neighborhoods. I feel like those are usually in like small areas. 'Cause even like Chirac, I know there were a lot of murders and stuff that took place over there, but that's still like a small area of Illinois, and it's not like a nationwide problem. Like, of course, there are statistics that would show, yes, it's an issue to a certain degree, but in these places, like, the cartel is killing people like crazy, like innocent civilians just walking down the street, they getting popped. Like, that's just not a thing in America. As much as they love to push that propaganda, it's just not. It's not a fucking thing. Of course it happens, and I feel like the cases sound so extreme because the U.S. is so big. So when, it is happening, the numbers might sound crazy, but in relation to the whole like country, we don't have a problem of just people getting shot because in the crossfire of drug wars. Like, that's just not. It's not like a huge problem here. It's just not. It's not. All right. In certain small areas, sure, you can say it's an issue. In certain neighborhoods, sure. But in comparison to the fucking cartel, like, they've killed so many people in these small, like, countries. They're not even that large, but, like, a lot of the country have people who are in the cartel, and they murder, like, large numbers of their population. So that's all. That's the only comparison I'm making, is that we don't have large numbers of our population just getting slaughtered, by, like, drug dealers and shit. You feel me? Anyway.
Because of the lyrical content of narco-corridos, it has angered a variety of different cartels for a variety of different reasons, which has led to them threatening and even murdering a ton of musicians. Chalino Sanchez is one of the most popular and earliest musicians who is believed to have been murdered by the cartel. His life and death is shrouded in fascination and mystery. So Chalino had a very rough childhood, and when he was a kid, he witnessed his sister get kidnapped and raped by a guy named Hector Perez. Apparently, Perez was a wealthy and powerful man. Many people also speculate that Perez was a member of the cartel. A few years later, Chalino ran into Perez and allegedly killed him. After that, he fled to Tijuana and helped people sneak across the border. He later went to the United States and worked a few odd jobs, but also apparently sold drugs according to his friends. And he was also allegedly still in the coyote business. By the way, there's not a ton of clear information about Chalino, which is why I keep saying allegedly, so make sure to take everything with a grain of salt. Anyways, in 1984, his brother Armando was shot and killed in a Tijuana hotel. After this, Chalino decided to follow his childhood dream and start writing corridos about his life experiences. Around this time, he also spent 8 months in prison and supposedly got somewhat involved with the cartels as they were fans of his music. Over time, his career began to pick up and he was developing a fan base, but his life would continue to get crazier. In 1992, while performing in a nightclub in Coachella, a man came up on stage and fired 4 shots, 2 of which hit Chalino. Chalino began firing back, facing towards the crowd, which led to about 7 people getting injured and 1 person dying. That same year, 4 months after the shooting incident, when Chalino was performing, he was handed a note from someone in the crowd. The exact message on the note is not known, but many people believe it said something along the lines of him dying after his performance. There is footage of him reading the note and crumpling it up, as he looks very nervous after reading it, but he continues to perform anyway. This is where details start to get murky, and there's a few different stories about which circumstances he left under. But what we do know is that the day after his performance, at 6 in the morning, Chalino Sanchez was found dead. And because of his crime-ridden life and alleged relationships with cartel members, many people believe that his death was related to the cartel. Since his death and because of his influence, many people have called him the king of the corrido. While this may be one of the more popular examples of cartel-related deaths with musicians, unfortunately there are many more. Sergio Gomez was another artist who was very popular. He was the headliner of a band called Que Paz de la Sierra and costed $100,000 just to book a show. He was born in Mexico but created the band while he was living in Chicago, and he was living in Indiana just before his death. His group didn't even make narco-corridos, but for some reason angered the cartel and received multiple threats about performing in certain cities, which even caused them to cancel some of their shows. But in 2007, after performing in Morelia, him and 2 promoters left the venue and were intercepted by multiple vans. They were kidnapped and the 2 promoters were freed. But Gomez was found the next day, dead. He was tortured, strangled, and burned before being dropped off on the outskirts of Morelia. Following this, multiple bands began canceling concerts and tours because they were scared of facing the same fate. Part of the reason so many artists canceled concerts and tours is because from 2006 to 2008, over a dozen popular Mexican musicians were killed, including Sergio Gomez. Another popular artist who fell victim to the brutal cartels was Valentin Elizalde. He was killed on November 25th of
this is what I'm talking about to support my point. Like, we ain't never had no shit like this. This is wild.
6. After a concert when he was only 27 years old. Most people think he was killed because of his song Amis Enemigos, which has lyrics that some people interpret to be comments about the Los Zetas cartel. The Los Zetas cartel is another very powerful cartel, and the person who was arrested and accused of killing Valentin was also a member of the Los Zetas. I've also seen people attribute his death to the Gulf cartel. Tons of other artists and multiple members of different bands have also fallen victim to the ruthless cartels. A lot of the time there aren't arrests made for the people committing these murders, so it's hard to confirm that all of these musicians were killed by the cartels. Some people have argued that they haven't, but seeing as how many of them wrote narco-corridos and a lot of the deaths were pretty brutal, many think it was the doing of the cartels. It even got to the point that some listeners were afraid to buy CDs with narco-corrido songs because they didn't want to favor one cartel over another.
Yikes.
Another fascinating thing that cartels will do in relation to the music industry is launder money through artists. Apparently, it's common in Mexico, South America, and parts of the southern United States to see a lot of new, unknown artists with no previous career pop up on the radio. According to Wikipedia, these music groups and singers start to appear consistently on radio, television, and public broadcasts with a strong promotion of their concerts. This happens for a fixed amount of time, and in the same sudden way they appear, they stop their promotion and disappear from the music scene. Now, normally, a lot of people don't think Wikipedia is a good source. I normally just go there to find other sources, but they were all archived. However, based on the cartel's involvement in the music industry and some things I'm going to cover, I don't think this sounds too far-fetched. So what people think is happening is that the cartels are making their own industry plants in a sense with payola and other methods. Then what they do is they launder their dirty money through these artists. A concert promoter in Mexico even said, "The narcos are completely involved in the business. They control everything. It's like a mafia." Another incident happened last year in which 2 record label executives were arrested by the FBI for doing business with a concert promoter who apparently had ties to a cartel. The concert promoter's name is Jesus Perez Alvear, and he is listed as a narcotics trafficker by the United States Kingpin Act. An ex-artist of their label, Del Records, whose name is Gerardo Ortiz, also makes narco-corridos. He had performed at 4 concerts organized by Perez and was even warned by the FBI that Perez was under investigation for these trafficking charges, yet he still performed after being warned. The government also believes that Perez is laundering money for the cartel as well, and the U.S. Treasury Department said Perez uses violence to obtain concessions to operate these concerts under the name of his music promotion business. They also said he often promotes musical acts known for singing narco-corridos or ballads that glorify drug traffickers and their illicit activities. Some of these acts have ties to drug trafficking organizations. So if Perez and some of the musicians he's promoting are linked to the cartel, it's not unbelievable that him and these musicians are laundering money for the cartel as well. Another thing that happens is cartels will pay money for artists to write narco-corridos about them, glorifying them in an attempt to spread propaganda.
A lot of the real-life drug runners would be commissioning corridos for themselves, and these corridos would be sort of propaganda for their organization.
Apparently, this is a very common thing that happens in the music industry, with cartels paying artists to write songs about them. They will detail battles between the cartels they are promoting and police, or even battles against other cartels. Sometimes these artists will also be related to the people in the cartels. Interestingly enough, a journalist for Medium said that while Chalino Sanchez was in jail, people began to find out about his writing skills. So apparently, he would be commissioned by low-level narcos to write narco-corridos about them, so that way they could get more attention. I actually did a video on musical propaganda a while ago, and it's pretty underrated, but in the video I covered how this has been going on for centuries in different countries around the world for a variety of different reasons. So it isn't very surprising that the cartel has gotten involved with musical propaganda too. It seems like, based on all of the incidents and information we just covered, that the cartel does seem to have some regular involvement in the music industry. Like I mentioned earlier, one concert promoter in Mexico even said the narcos are completely involved in the business.
That's wild.
Well, Peso Pluma is one of the artists who has been affected by the cartel recently. Like I said, he recently made headlines after receiving death threats from a drug cartel, which led to him canceling his concert in Tijuana. There were 4 large banners throughout Tijuana that appeared September 12th, which read, "This is for you, Peso Pluma. Don't show up on October 14th because it will be your last presentation. You were disrespectful and loose-tongued. You will show up and we are going to beat the shit out of you. The banners were also signed CJNG, which represents the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Now, oftentimes in the States, if something like this were to happen, it probably wouldn't be taken as seriously, but since the cartels have already killed tons of musicians, this was a threat worth taking seriously. The reason that they were so upset with Peso Pluma in particular is because in a lot of his music, he makes narco-corridos and talks about the cartels. Apparently, he has had several songs praising El Chapo, and the CJNG is a rival cartel to El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel. The man who is believed to have placed the banner was arrested in Tijuana the following day. Peso Pluma has been blowing up, and because of this, he's been popularizing these songs outside of Mexico and the Mexican immigrant communities in the United States. LA Times said he is at the vanguard of a new generation of musicians reinventing the genre and pushing it to fresh heights. Peso Pluma has not actually commented on the content of some of his songs, and he even hung up on a New York Times reporter who asked about it during an interview. Of course, he doesn't only make narco-corridos, but he has helped popularize it, which has left some wondering why the US government hasn't done anything about it. But the reason Elijah Wald explained it is pretty simple.
There has never been much crackdown on corridos in the US, mostly because
We don't have this.
people don't, the people doing the crackdowns don't speak Spanish.
Another group of artists that has been threatened by the cartel recently is the band Fuerza Regida. Another handwritten banner appeared in Tijuana on Monday, October 2nd by the same group that threatened Peso Pluma. It had a similar message warning them that if they performed, it would be their last performance, which led them to also cancel their concert. Fuerza Regida has also praised El Chapo in some of their songs, as they also make narco-corridos, which is why they are now at odds with some cartels. The same cartel actually was behind a shooting at a mall in Tijuana because a narco-corrido band called Grupo Arriesgado was signing autographs there. They left behind another banner at the scene warning the band to leave the city or suffer the consequences. Apparently, the reason that they had issues with this band is because they allegedly sing songs to the Sinaloa cartel. So the two big players we've seen recently that are involved with the music industry are the Sinaloa and the Jalisco New Generation cartels, although I'm sure there are more. In an attempt to keep safe and stay away from the cartels without having to change their music, many of these narco-corrido artists have moved to the United States, with Los Angeles being a big destination for many.
Porque Los Ángeles se podían decir y Culiacán no se podían decir. Y por eso que la carrera de Commander y de este tipo de artistas inicia en Los Ángeles.
So why do these cartels kill musicians, and why are they involved in the music industry in the first place? Well, one of the main reasons, like we've covered, is because the cartels want to look good. The whole reason they pay for propaganda is because they want people to like them. And when there's a bunch of nice-sounding corridos with cool stories about your cartel, it's more likely that people may think more positively of those groups. So when the musicians who aren't on their payroll, like Peso Pluma for example, are talking about rival cartels and glorifying their enemies, that's when they want to take action. Of course, there are other reasons that they get involved too, like money laundering, for example. So the point of this video is not to demonize narco-corridos or the artists making their music. Instead, I just wanted to point out how the cartel has such a strange and pretty scary involvement in the music industry. Of course, the money laundering and propaganda stuff is interesting, but it's terrifying how musicians with no links to the cartel can be threatened or even killed just for writing songs. It's hard to find a lot of information on this subject, and for some reason it's not super well documented. So if I missed anything or got anything wrong, please let me know in the comments.
Wow, this is insane and super scary. And obviously, we have this issue on a smaller scale because there are rappers who have gotten killed, but they've been killed by like rival gangs and shit. People from their old hoods because they still want to, be in that street life to a certain degree. So I feel like it's been like, situations like that. But this is like the cartel. They have a whole organization who is like running this shit and like threatening people and killing multiple artists. Like they killed a lot of, people. So it's crazy that this is a thing. And just hearing the music is like, what? Because it does sound so happy and upbeat. So it's just really crazy. Very interesting though. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Let me know what the videos you want to watch and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.